Hello and welcome to this presentation from Sarah Neville and Us for Training and Consultancy on behalf of Childcare.co.uk. This presentation is an introduction to the General Data Protection Regulation, GDPR, for staff members in a childminding or small nursery setting. If staff have any further questions after the training, they should ask the lead childminder or the manager, who can refer them back to me if you're not sure of an answer. The intention of this presentation is to raise staff awareness about the General Data Protection Regulation and about data protection generally, and to promote a culture of secure data protection across the whole setting. I am not a GDPR expert. I have spoken to the Information Commissioner's Office at length, and I have taken advice from GDPR experts and other trainers before recording this presentation. However, if you want to check anything I have talked about, or you need further advice, you should contact ICO direct. I know that data protection isn't the most scintillating of topics, but we do need to cover this so everyone understands their responsibilities to comply with the new legislation. Under GDPR, we need evidence that we are compliant from the start. We need documents and processes in place to show we're following the regulations. Evidence that we are safeguarding data that we hold about children, their families, and staff. The first section of this training is a general introduction to GDPR and what it means to early years settings. GDPR is a new EU law. It will be retained after Brexit because the UK will still be trading with the EU. It has been introduced because the current Data Protection Act, which we're using at the moment, is over 20 years old and very out of date. GDPR is legislated by the Information Commissioner's Office, the same way Ofsted regulate the EYFS. GDPR is about how organisations hold and process data. It covers any and all personally identifiable information about children, about children's families, and about you, the staff in the setting. And it covers paper as well as electronic data. We need to get GDPR right because it could cause serious damage to business reputations if there's a data breach, and there are huge fines for non-compliance. The childminder, the owner, the manager, is the data controller. They control data about children, families, and staff members. In your work, you, the staff, are data processors because you're processing data about children and their families. Children and families are the data subjects. They are the subject of the data we're processing. And when we're talking about staff data, you become the data subjects. The childminder, the owner, the manager control data about you. Under GDPR, there are legal bases for processing data. The strongest ones are because we need them to comply with the EYFS. The useful ones help us to do our jobs properly. And the weakest ones are weak because we have to inform parents that they can withdraw their consent at any time. For example, we have a legal obligation to ask questions that are required by the EYFS or HMRC for payroll. We can use the legitimate interests legal basis when we're taking photos of children and we're putting them in their learning and development files, or we're sharing them with parents, because parents would reasonably expect us to do that. And it's a requirement of the EYFS to share learning and development information and to promote home learning. But we use consent if we're, for example, asking permission to put photos on display or to put them onto Facebook, because they're not actually needed on display to comply with EYFS. They're nice, they might give children a sense of belonging, but it's not a requirement, and we don't have a legitimate or a vital interest to process them in that way. These are the principles of GDPR. They're really important, and we're looking at them now because we're processing sensitive information about children and their families on a day-to-day basis, and we might know personal information about each other. Data must be processed lawfully and fairly and in a transparent way. It can only be collected for the reason we've collected it. We say we are collecting your data for processing payroll, and that's what we use it for. We can't ask questions or collect information just in case, like this funny cartoon saying. It must be accurate. Your manager will ask you to update your staff file regularly. Parents will know that they need to keep their children's information updated. That's how we comply with accuracy. To help comply with GDPR, Settings will be writing a privacy notice and a new retention policy. You should take time out to have a look through that and see how the information is being shared with parents. You will also have a staff privacy notice, which talks about how your information is used and stored and shared, and you should take a moment to read that. Every individual, you, me, my children, parents, children who use your setting, children when they're older, when they're in their teens and older, everyone has rights under GDPR, and accountability is really important. We have the right to be informed, so that's our privacy notice. We're informing you what data we've got about you. We have a right to access our data, to look at it, to see what's held about us, and we can't be charged if we ask somebody to do that. So you can go to your doctors and say, I want to access my data, and they have to show it you. They have to do it within 30 days, and it has to be free. You've got a right to put data right, to rectify it. Parents can say, I want to correct that. We all have a right to erasure. Parents can come to us and say, I want you to erase that document. It's also known as the right to be forgotten. But this one's a tricky one because we may need to keep it for other reasons, so it has to be used carefully. We have a right to restrict what happens to our data, to say, no, I don't want you to do that with my data. When you ask parents, can I put your child's photo on the wall? And they say, yes, okay. And then a month or two later, they say, no, I don't want you to do that anymore. They have a right to say no and for you to take it down. We have a right to data portability, to transferring records to the next setting. Or you can ask your employer to transfer records to your next employer. And we have a right to object. We can all say no to processing certain types of data. There's also a right to have a say about automated decision making and profiling, which isn't relevant to us in early years. You know, when you look at something on Amazon, it pops up later as a Facebook advert. That's profiling as well. But we don't need to know about that for our jobs. Your setting will have new paperwork for GDPR. We've already mentioned the privacy notice and the retention policy. Your manager or your owner will also have updated other documents, maybe the complaints policy or the confidentiality policy or e-safety or your parent permission forms. Do take a moment to look at the documents so you can see how they relate to GDPR. You'll be sharing them with parents, and if parents ask you any questions, it may be useful if you can give them a quick answer because you've read it yourself. Part 2 of this training is about your data and children's data and how it's kept safe and what to do if there's a mistake, what to do if there's a data breach. Thinking about staff data, we're talking about your personal data, data relating to you. Most of it's required by the EYFS or HMRC for payroll, or you might have disclosed other information to your manager, which they need to keep confidential and safe. When we're talking about children and family data, we don't need permission to hold this data. We don't need consent. It's legally required, as we said earlier, as part of the contract by the EYFS or the childcare register if you're thinking about older children. ICOs say that personal data is information that could be used to identify an individual. So it's all of these things, isn't it? On funding forms and contracts and permission forms and anything else you hold. Sensitive data. Sensitive data could be used, for example, to unlawfully discriminate against you. If you give your religious beliefs or your political opinions to your manager and they say, "Oh, I don't like that, I'm not going to employ them." Most of this is covered by the protected characteristics in the Equality Act 2010. And if you're not sure, you should refer to that for more information. When we're thinking about sensitive family personal data, it's data that if we lose it, it could be used to identify the child or to harm them. Think about when a family says, "No, I don't want you to put my child's photo online because they're fostered and their parents mustn't know where they are." And then one day you're busy uploading some photos and you're in a bit of a rush and you forget that child's photo mustn't go online and you press send. That's sensitive data that you've incorrectly shared. Or it might mean leaving forms out on the top of a surface and parents come in to collect and have a little look at them. Or you've left the tablet open or your back's to a window when you're using tablet and somebody looks in and they can see another child's sensitive personal data. Very important to do our jobs properly that we think about where we're storing this data so we can think about how we're keeping it safe. Your setting will have done a data audit for GDPR, and that should detail staff files, children's learning and development records, whether they're on paper, a camera, a phone, a tablet, a laptop, a memory stick, however they're stored, local authority funding forms, mobile phones which have numbers of parents on them, Facebook pages, WhatsApp. Your manager will check your device history regularly to make sure the sites visited are safe and secure. It's an important part of data storage and data protection. We'll need to tell you, your manager will need to tell you where your data is shared and what is shared. For example, if you're enrolling on a local authority course, they might need your name, your date of birth, and other details on the enrolment form. You should be informed about that. We have to share children and family data as well, don't we? We must always tell parents how their data is shared and why and when and with whom and what happens to it. Apart from serious safeguarding information, which we sometimes have to report without informing them, don't we? But we should still be letting them know in the initial interviews that that might happen. For example, we'll tell to parents, won't we? We're doing your child's 2-year progress check at the moment. It's statutory. We need to do it. We'd like you to pop in and give us some information, and it will be shared with the health visitor as part of the integrated review. Or you might say to a parent, thank you for letting me know your child has a peanut allergy. When we go out on an outing, we'll have to let our colleagues know about that so they don't bring peanuts and so they don't put peanuts on the table in front of your child. It's really important that we're professional, we don't gossip, we only share what we're allowed to share, what we've discussed with parents already. When we're thinking about taking information home, it's really important as staff that you protect your business's reputation. You don't put things on social media about children, their families, your colleagues. You don't take information home without specific permission from your manager or owner. When we're taking children and family information out with us, we need to keep it as safe as possible. We'll usually put it in a bag, then we do with the bag? We hang it over the pram, which is fine when we're pushing it, but what if we have to go into the front of the pram to talk to a child? Is the information safe then? Or we go into a cafe and we pop it on a chair, then we have to go and change a child. We need to take it with us, don't we, to keep it safe? Or children and family details are on a setting phone, it's in our pocket, we bend over to feed the ducks and pop. It's really important to risk assess. For childminders, this doesn't necessarily need to be in writing, but you need to think through how you keep information safe on outings, how you make sure your secure passwords are not shared, that you have auto lock on tablets when you're using them, things like that. When you're talking to parents at the start and end of the day, it's really important that you're not in earshot of other families, especially if you're sharing information about behaviour or safeguarding or illness. It's okay to say, we've had a good day, your child's had fun, look out for the diary in the inbox later. That's fine. Any more than that must be shared in the office. Children and their families have a right to confidentiality. Here are some little scenarios for you to come back to and think about. Visitors should either sign in or be signed in when they arrive, and they should be accompanied. They shouldn't be left unsupervised with children. Ideally, they should be given some information about the setting, which includes a privacy statement and a reminder about not using their mobile phone and digital camera and things like that. Parents don't have to sign in when they arrive to collect their child, but remember they should be dealt with individually, and information about their child's day should be delivered confidentially. When visitors, including parents, are invited into the office for a meeting, they shouldn't be able to see any paperwork or information about other children or families or staff members. ICO recommend a clear desk policy in all settings. It's really important that data is deleted securely. Shred any paper that you've used to put notes maybe about a child's observations before you write them up. And if it's on a device, when you've used it and it's no longer useful, you need to delete it. If you're not sure, you should ask your manager or your owner for help. If you say the wrong thing about a child to the wrong parent, or you lose some information about a child, Or you put something on Facebook at the weekend and realise, oops, shouldn't have done that. Or you post a photo of a child without their blurred face and parents have said no to sharing photos. Or you update the wrong child's file with information and press send without thinking. You must report it to your owner or manager. It's a data breach. It's covered by whistleblowing procedures in the safeguarding policy, and your owner or manager must know about it. Are you ready to test your knowledge of GDPR now? If there are a few of you listening, nominate someone different to answer each question, and you can pause it while you have a chat. If it's just you, ask yourself and see if you know the answer. You can go back to the relevant slide and listen again if you want to check something. Some data protection questions. Number 1. There are 4, not many. A parent asks to see their child's file. You're in the middle of a busy handover. What would you say to them? Number 2. A staff member at another setting is your friend. She asks for a parent's mobile phone number to tell them something about their child. You've got it on you. It's in your outing mobile phone. Would you give it to them? Number 3. A parent says, "Oh, don't understand this new privacy thing. What should I do?" What would you do? Would you answer it yourself, or would you refer them to the manager? A parent asks you to delete their child's profile on the Learning Journey software program because they don't want you to use it anymore. She wants you to do it now, and she's quite insistent. What would you do? Answers. Number 1. Yes, that's absolutely fine. You can see your child's file at any mutually convenient time. Come on into the office where the manager will talk to you. Number 2, absolutely not. You don't give it to them. You can say, "I'll speak to the parent and ask them to contact you," but you wouldn't give out their details like that. Number 3, invite them into the office with the manager or the owner at a mutually convenient time to discuss it in more detail. Number 4, well, we won't allow ourselves to be bullied by parents, will we? They can be insistent. They can be as insistent as they want, but that's not your decision. That's not something you can do as an employee. You need to refer them back to the manager or the owner, where they can go into the office and they can talk about it and explain their concerns. And in data protection scenarios we were looking at before, sharing the wrong information with the wrong parent, or sending the wrong child's details out in their diary, or losing a bag or a phone on an outing, or putting a photo of a child online without permission, again, we must report it to the owner or manager and they can sort it out. As I said already, have a look at the new documents about GDPR. Ask if you've got any questions. Your manager will add GDPR to your supervision meetings as part of safeguarding so that it's regularly brought up and regularly discussed. Not a lot's changed really. It's about securing data protection. But as I said at the beginning, it's also about raising awareness of the importance of securing data protection and promoting a culture of secure protection across the whole setting, which is why everyone needs to know about it. I hope you found the training useful and informative. Managers, don't forget to keep a register of staff members who participated in the training. You'll find free certificate and handouts for staff in the Staff Training Information Guide, which is free from Childcare.co.uk. Here's the link. Thank you.